At 4 in the morning, a man walked into a store and bought a brand new mattress. At 6, he called 911 to report his wife missing from her morning jog. Miles Ghost Hunter here. Mark Hacking lied about everything in his life. His college degree, his medical school acceptance, his career, his future. Everything except the receipt. A receipt from a furniture store, time-stamped at 4:17 in the morning, July 19th, 2004. The one piece of paper in Mark Hacking's entire existence that told the truth. By the time detectives found it, his pregnant wife Lori was already buried under 9,000 tons of garbage at the Salt Lake County landfill. And the story of how she got there starts not with a gun, not with a fight, but with a phone call about a move-in date. To understand how a man can look his pregnant wife in the eyes over breakfast, plan their future together over dinner, and then end her life before sunrise, you need to understand the architecture of a lie that took a decade to build and a single phone call to destroy. Let me take you back. Lori K. Soares was the fifth of 9 children. Born in 1977 in Orem, Utah. Raised in a family so large that the dining table had to be extended twice. Her mother later said that Lori was the one who held things together. Not the loudest, not the most demanding, the one who remembered birthdays, the one who called when no one else did. She was athletic, ran cross-country in high school, kept running into her 20s, 5 mornings a week, before the sun came up. Memory Grove Park in Salt Lake City was her route, a 1.5-mile loop through the canyon, past the war memorials, back up to the street. She could do it with her eyes closed. She nearly did, most mornings, still half asleep at 5:30, earbuds in, shoes laced. Out the door. She worked at Wells Fargo as a brokerage assistant. Good at her job, reliable. The kind of employee who stayed late without being asked and never mentioned it the next day. Her colleagues described her as steady, not flashy, the person you gave the complicated file to because you knew it would come back organized. She met Mark Hacking when they were teenagers, both from Mormon families in the Salt Lake Valley, both raised in a community where early marriage was expected, where family was the organizing principle of 2 years after graduation. He enrolled at the University of Utah, declared a major, attended some classes. Then he stopped attending. Not dramatically, not with a crisis or a breakdown. He just stopped going, dropped courses, failed others, accumulated a transcript that looked like a demolition site. But he never told anyone. Not his parents, not his brothers, not his wife. Instead, he got up every morning, got dressed, drove to campus, and sat in the library for hours, sometimes the entire day. He read magazines, he wandered the halls, he sat in the cafeteria and ate lunch surrounded by students who were doing what he was pretending to do. When Lori asked about his classes, he told her stories, detailed stories, professors' names, exam schedules, study group frustrations, the specifics of a life that did not exist, delivered with the casual exhaustion of a man living it. He did this for years, not weeks, not months, years. And then it escalated, because the lie had a trajectory. Mark had told Lori he was pre-med. Pre-med leads to medical school applications. Applications lead to acceptances. Acceptances lead to enrollment. Enrollment leads to a new city, a new apartment, a new life. The lie demanded to be fed, and Mark fed it. He told Lori he had been accepted to the University of North Carolina School of Medicine in Chapel Hill, one of the top medical programs in the country. He described the acceptance process. The interview, the letter. He may have fabricated documents, he certainly fabricated excitement. Lori was overjoyed. She told her family, she told her co-workers, she started planning the move. She gave notice at Wells Fargo. She organized farewell dinners with friends. She researched apartments in Chapel Hill. She bought packing boxes. And then, in June of 2004, Lori discovered she was pregnant. The timing felt perfect. New baby, New city, new chapter. Mark was going to be a doctor. They were going to build a life in North Carolina. Everything was converging toward a future that Lori could see as clearly as her morning running route. Mark saw it differently. Mark saw a freight train approaching at full speed, with no brakes and no track ahead. The move was scheduled for August. In August, Lori would expect to arrive at a medical school where Mark was not enrolled, in a program that had never heard of him, at a university where he had never submitted a single document. The clock was ticking. It had been ticking for years, but now, in the summer of 2004, Lori could hear it too. She just did not know it yet. July, Salt Lake City. The Hacking's apartment on Lincoln Street was half-packed. Boxes stacked against the walls, labels in Lori's handwriting. Kitchen, bedroom, baby stuff. The furniture was tagged for the movers. The lease termination was signed. Lori called the University of North Carolina. Not because she was suspicious. She had no reason to be suspicious. She called because she was organized. She wanted to confirm the orientation date for incoming medical student spouses. She wanted to know what day to schedule the moving truck. She wanted the address of the building where Mark would register. The woman in the admissions office checked the system, checked again, spelled the last name letter by letter. Then she said the sentence that would end Lori Hacking's life. "We have no student by that name." Lori hung up. She sat with it. Then she called back, thinking there must be a mistake. Different department, same answer. She checked with the registrar. Mark Hacking had never applied, had never been considered, had never submitted transcripts because he had no transcripts to submit, because he had never graduated from the University of Utah, because he had stopped attending classes years ago. In the space of 2 phone calls, every wall in Lori's life crumbled. The medical degree, the graduation, the future in North Carolina, the man she thought she married. She confronted Mark on the evening of July 19th. The details of that conversation are not fully known. What is known is that it happened. Mark later admitted to it. He admitted that Lori now knew everything. The fake degree, the fake acceptance, the fake future. Years of fabricated schedules and invented professors and phantom exams. All of it. Exposed. Irrevocable. Now here is the moment. The development that turns this from a story about a pathological liar into a story about a killing. It is the evening of July 19th, 2004. Lori Hacking knows the truth. She is pregnant. She is angry. She is devastated. She has options. She could leave. She could call her family. She could take the night to process and make decisions in the morning. She could forgive. She could not forgive. She could do anything because Lori Hacking is alive and the future, however shattered, still belongs to her. Mark Hacking also has options. He could confess to his family. He could beg for help. He could check himself into a facility. He could accept the humiliation, the disappointment, the collapse of the image he had spent a decade constructing. The shame would be enormous, but shame is survivable. If Mark Hacking picks up the phone and calls his brother that night, Lori Hacking is alive today. Their child is 19 years old. The boxes labeled Chapel Hill are unpacked in some other apartment, in some other city, in some other version of the future. But the future still exists. He did not pick up the phone. He picked up a rifle. Lori went to bed, exhausted, upset, pregnant. She fell asleep in their bed on Lincoln Street. Mark waited. He took a .22 caliber rifle. He walked into the bedroom. His wife was asleep, and he shot her in the head. From this moment, there is no exit. There is no version of events where Lori Hacking wakes up. There is no fork in the road. The road ends here, in a bedroom in Salt Lake City, at some point between 11 at night and 2 in the morning, with a single gunshot that Lori Hacking never heard. What happened next was not grief. It was not panic. It was logistics. Mark Hacking wrapped his wife's body in garbage bags. Then he stripped the bed. The mattress was soaped. Blood does not wash out of a mattress. Mark knew this the way a man who has been lying for a decade knows things. Instinctively, practically, without emotion. He loaded the mattress, with Lori's body inside or alongside it, into his vehicle. He drove to a dumpster near their apartment complex. He placed the mattress and his wife into the dumpster. A 27-year-old woman, 5 weeks pregnant, deposited into a commercial waste container, like a damaged piece of furniture. Then, he drove to a store. The timestamp on the security camera reads 4:17 in the morning. Mark Hacking walks through the entrance of a mattress store. He is calm. He is browsing. He selects a mattress, pays for it, arranges delivery. The transaction takes 11 minutes. He drives home. He places the new mattress on the bed frame where the old one was. He arranges the sheets. He makes the bed. He removes any visible trace of what happened in that room. And then at 5:37 in the morning, he calls his brother Lance. He is crying. He is incoherent. He says Lori went for her morning jog and has not come back. He says something is wrong. At 6:02, he calls 911. My wife went running in Memory Grove Park this morning. She always runs there. She has not come home. She is not answering her phone. Something happened. Please send someone. The police arrive. Mark is standing outside. He is barefoot. He is wearing only boxer shorts and a t-shirt. He is shaking. He looks like a man in shock because he is performing a man in shock. And he has been performing for so long that performance is the only mode he has left. The search begins immediately. Memory Grove Park is 1.5 miles from the apartment. Dozens of officers, search dogs, helicopters. Within hours, it becomes the largest missing persons search Salt Lake City has conducted in years. Volunteers pour in, hundreds of them. Lori's family, her co-workers from Wells Fargo, members of the church. Strangers who saw the news. They searched the park, the trails, the creek beds, the canyon, every bush, every drainage pipe, every shadow. They searched for days. They found nothing, because Lori Hacking was never in Memory Grove Park that morning, or any morning after July 19th. Mark played the role. He appeared on local news. He made tearful pleas. He hugged Lori's parents in front of cameras. He held vigils. He answered questions with the hollow, shell-shocked cadence of a man whose world has collapsed. And in a way, his world had collapsed, just not the way he described. But Miles, GhostHunter, has learned this about liars, about the real liars, the ones who build entire architectures out of fiction and live inside them for years. They are brilliant at construction, but terrible at demolition. They can build a fake life one brick at a time, but they cannot cleanly destroy the real one. They always leave a receipt, and Mark left more than one. Salt Lake City Police Detective Dwayne Baird was not a man who assumed the best about distraught husbands. He had been doing this long enough to know that when a woman disappears, you look at the husband first. Not because husbands are always guilty, but because they are guilty often enough that it would be negligent not to look. He looked at Mark Hacking, and he saw a man who was performing. The barefoot arrival, the boxer shorts, the perfect amount of incoherence. It was too shaped, too cinematic. Baird started pulling threads. Thread number 1, Mark's enrollment at the University of North Carolina School of Medicine, verified in under 30 minutes. Non-existent. Mark Hacking had never applied. Thread number 2, Mark's degree from the University of Utah, verified in under an hour. Non-existent. Mark Hacking had not graduated, had not come close to graduating, had accumulated a transcript that was more withdrawal notices than grades. Thread number 3, Mark's daily schedule. For years, he told Lori he was attending classes. Where was he actually going? The library, coffee shops, bookstores, wandering campus like a ghost in his own life. Within 48 hours of Lori's disappearance, Detectives knew that Mark Hacking was a fraud. Every pillar of his public identity was hollow. But being a liar does not make you a killer. Plenty of men lie about their careers without killing anyone. Baird needed evidence that connected the fraud to the disappearance. He got it from a furniture store. Security camera footage from the early hours of July 19th showed Mark Hacking purchasing a mattress at 4:17 in the morning. The receipt was time-stamped. The transaction was recorded. The delivery address was his apartment on Lincoln Street. Baird looked at the timeline. Laurie allegedly left for her jog around 5:30. Mark allegedly called 911 at 6:02. But at 4:17, Mark was buying a mattress. Why does a man buy a mattress at 4 in the morning on the same day his wife vanishes from a jog? The answer was obvious, and it was confirmed when investigators examined the Hacking's apartment and found a freshly made bed with a brand new mattress on a frame that had held a different mattress the day before. The old mattress was not in the apartment. It was not in storage. It was not at a donation center. It was gone. Baird issued a search for every dumpster within a 2-mile radius of the Lincoln Street apartment. Waste management records showed that dumpsters in that zone were emptied on the morning of July 19th. The contents had already been transported to the Salt Lake County landfill. The search moved to the landfill. While investigators were building a case, Mark Hacking was building a defense. On July 24th, 5 days after Laurie's disappearance, Mark was found running naked through a hotel parking lot at 2 in the morning. He was admitted to the University of Utah Neuropsychiatric Institute for psychiatric evaluation. From inside the hospital, Mark called his brother Lance. During that phone call, Mark admitted that he had killed Laurie. He said he had shot her while she slept and disposed of her body in a dumpster. Lance Hacking did something that shattered his family and may have saved the case. He told the police. He also went to Mark's car and found a .22 caliber rifle, a hunting knife, and a pair of scissors with what appeared to be blood on the blades. He turned it all over to investigators. Mark Hacking was arrested on August 2, 2004, but they still had not found Laurie. The Salt Lake County landfill covers hundreds of acres. By mid-July, the section where the Lincoln Street dumpsters were deposited contained an estimated 9,000 tons of garbage, compressed, layered, decomposing in the July heat. Detectives organized a search team, not cadaver dogs, because the biological material was buried under tons of compacted waste. Not heavy machinery, because they could not risk destroying evidence. They used rakes, shovels, gloved hands. For weeks, investigators worked the landfill, section by section, layer by layer, in temperatures that exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The smell was suffocating. The work was physically brutal. Several investigators required medical attention for heat exhaustion. On October 1, 2004, 74 days after Laurie Hacking disappeared, her remains were found at the landfill. Partial skeletal remains, consistent with the area and time frame identified by waste management records. DNA confirmed the identification. Laurie K. Hacking was brought home to her family, what was left of her. Now Miles GhostHunter wants to talk about the architecture, not of the crime, of the lie that made the crime inevitable. Because here is what makes Mark Hacking different from every other husband who killed his wife and tried to cover it up. Mark Hacking did not kill Laurie because he hated her. He did not kill her because of money or infidelity or rage. He killed her because she was about to reveal that he was nobody. Think about that. Really think about it. A man builds a fake identity over the course of a decade, layer by layer, lie by lie, each one resting on the one before it. The dropped class he never mentioned becomes the failed semester he never disclosed, becomes the abandoned degree he never admitted, becomes the phantom career he never had. At every stage, the lie could have been caught, and at every stage, it was not. The University of Utah did not contact Mark's family when he stopped attending. There was no system in place to notify a student's emergency contacts when enrollment lapsed. Mark simply stopped showing up, and the university simply stopped expecting him. Mark's family did not ask to see a diploma. They did not attend a graduation ceremony, because Mark told them the ceremony conflicted with a family event and he would receive his diploma by mail. They believed him because he was their son and their brother, and because questioning someone's achievement in a close-knit Mormon family felt like an act of aggression. Lori did not ask to see transcripts or acceptance letters. She did not verify Mark's enrollment independently until July of 2004, after years of marriage, because why would she? He was her husband. He came home tired from classes. He complained about professors. He studied on weekends. The performance was seamless, and trust, once given, is rarely audited. And this is the system that created Mark hacking. Not a system of malice, a system of trust. In a community built on faith, on family bonds, on the assumption that the people closest to you are telling the truth, Mark hacking found a perfect environment for deception. Nobody checked because checking felt like betrayal. Nobody verified because verification implied suspicion. And suspicion, in the culture Mark inhabited, was almost as shameful as failure. So the lie grew. It grew because it was never pruned. It grew because every person in Mark's life watered it with trust and attention and love. And Mark absorbed all of it and gave back nothing but fiction. And the lie had a metabolism. It needed to be fed. Each new layer of deception required a corresponding layer of performance. Fake schedules, fake stress, fake celebrations. When you are pretending to attend medical school, you cannot simply say you are attending medical school. You must describe the lectures. You must complain about the workload. You must fabricate friendships with classmates who do not exist. This is exhausting, and it is unsustainable, because the lie is always accelerating toward a wall. The wall for Mark was August 2004, the date they were supposed to arrive in Chapel Hill, the date Lori would walk into the medical school administration building and discover that her husband was a phantom. Mark had known this wall was coming for months, perhaps years, and he had done nothing to avoid it, because doing something would have meant confronting the truth, and confronting the truth would have meant destroying the only version of himself that anyone had ever valued. Mark hacking was not a doctor. He was not a student. He was not even a college graduate. Without the lie, he was a 28-year-old man with no degree, no career, no skills, and no explanation for how he had spent the last decade of his life. The lie was not protecting a secret. The lie was his identity. And when Lori's phone call to the admissions office tore that identity apart, Mark did not experience it as embarrassment or shame. He experienced it as annihilation. This is what Miles GhostHunter has come to understand about compulsive liars who reach the end of their architecture. They do not see exposure as a social problem to be managed. They see it as death, the death of the self they have constructed. And some of them, the ones who have built nothing real underneath the fiction, respond to that death the only way they know how, by making it someone else's death instead. Lori hacking was not killed because she did something wrong. She was killed because she discovered something true. And that is the thing about truth. It does not negotiate. It does not wait for you to be ready. It does not care about your timeline or your carefully constructed facade. It arrives when someone picks up a phone and asks a simple question, and it dismantles in seconds what took years to build. Mark hacking stood trial in April of 2005. His defense team initially explored an insanity plea: the naked run through the hotel parking lot, the psychiatric hospitalization, the history of compulsive lying so extreme it might constitute a personality disorder. The prosecution had simpler language: premeditation. A man who waited for his wife to fall asleep, who retrieved a rifle, who fired a single shot, who then spent the next 2 hours methodically disposing of evidence, purchasing a replacement mattress, staging a crime scene, and rehearsing a performance for the 911 call. That is not insanity. That is planning. Mark changed his plea to guilty on April 15, 2005. He stood in a Salt Lake City courtroom and admitted to killing Lori Hacking, his wife, while she slept. He admitted to disposing of her body in a dumpster. He admitted that he did it because she had discovered that his entire adult life was a fabrication. The judge sentenced him to 6 years to life in the Utah State Prison. Lori's mother, Thelma Soares, spoke at the sentencing. She described her daughter. The running, the phone calls, the way Lori organized everything, including the move to a city she would never see, for a future that never existed. She described learning about the pregnancy after Lori was already gone, a grandchild she would never hold. She said she forgave Mark. She said it because her faith required it. But forgiveness and understanding are different things, and Thelma Soares made clear that she would never understand how the young man who sat at her dinner table for years, who called her mom, who smiled at family photographs, could have been empty the entire time. Mark Hacking filed for divorce from prison in 2006. The paperwork was processed. The marriage ended on paper the way it ended in reality, with Mark making a decision that served only himself. He has appeared before the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole twice. In 2016, they denied release. In 2021, they denied again. The board cited the severity of the crime, the premeditation, and the absence of genuine accountability. Mark expressed remorse. The board noted that Mark Hacking had spent his entire adult life expressing things he did not mean, and they were not confident this time was different. As of this recording, Mark Hacking remains incarcerated at the Utah State Prison. He is eligible for another parole hearing, but no date has been set. Now here is what Miles GhostHunter wants to leave you with. This case is taught in psychology courses. It is cited in studies of pseudologia fantastica, pathological lying, compulsive deception. Researchers have examined Mark Hacking's behavior and mapped it against clinical frameworks and diagnostic criteria and theoretical models. But Miles GhostHunter is not a psychologist. And what strikes me about this case is not the clinical diagnosis, it is the architecture. Mark Hacking built a building with no foundation. He built it one floor at a time, each floor resting on the one below, each one requiring the next, each one more precarious than the last. And nobody looked down, not his professors who did not notice when he stopped attending, not his family who did not ask to see a diploma, not his wife who did not verify a medical school acceptance until the moving boxes were packed. This is not a story about a man who snapped. Mark Hacking did not snap. He reached the top floor of a building that had no ground floor, and when someone finally looked down, he pushed them off the edge, rather than admit the building was not real. And the mattress. The mattress is what stays with me. At 4:17 in the morning, standing in a furniture store with his wife's blood still drying in his apartment, Mark Hacking browsed. He compared. He selected. He paid. He arranged delivery. 11 minutes of normal consumer behavior performed by a man who had, less than 3 hours earlier, murdered the only person who knew the truth about him. Because that is what Mark Hacking was. Not a monster, not a madman, a performer. A man so deeply embedded in the practice of pretending that even the aftermath of murder became another scene to stage, another set to dress, another role to prepare for. He bought a new mattress because the old one had evidence on it, but he also bought it because that is what Mark Hacking did. He replaced the thing that was damaged with something that looked clean and new and unsuspicious. He had been doing it his entire life, replacing failed semesters with fictional ones, replacing a missing degree with a fabricated acceptance, replacing truth with whatever was more convenient. In the end, he tried to replace his wife. He could not, because Lori Hacking was the one real thing in Mark Hacking's life, and he destroyed her for the same reason he destroyed everything real. Because real things can be checked. Real things can make phone calls. Real things can ask questions that fictional things cannot survive. At 4 in the morning, he bought a brand new mattress. And that mattress, with its timestamp and its receipt and its security camera footage, became the one thing in Mark Hacking's entire life that he could not lie about. The mattress told the truth. Mark Hacking never did. Next time on Miles' Ghost Hunter, a child adopted into a loving family, a normal upbringing, a bright future. And then the mask slipped. And what was underneath was something the family never could have prepared for. The Adopted Monster. Episode 12. Miles' Ghost Hunter. I will see you in the dark.